and Paul, who is in Central. So we've kind of got most of the country covered. And each one of these individuals will talk a little bit about themselves when we get into the presentation. But I also wanted to just again thank you. I believe this is like Arthur mentioned, a great opportunity, great timing. I hope you had a very reflectful and Memorial Day weekend that was filled with gratitude. We certainly did in our household, and are excited that we continue to traverse through these unprecedented times together. And as we go through this presentation, we will have bits and pieces of our opportunity and the business model that we bring to you today, and how it has pivoted in light of COVID-19, and how we think that we're postured for success when we come out of this, and whatever that new normal looks like. With that being said, I'm going to now share out my screen. Make sure that this works. All right, team. Somebody give me a thumbs up that you see. All right, good deal. Thank you, Paul. All right. Well, once again, thank you for this time. And what I'd like to talk about now for the next little bit is Veteran Ventures Capital. Now, what Veteran Ventures Capital is it is an investment firm and consulting firm that is centered around what we call veteranpreneurship. And those are veterans, people that have served their country, and are looking to take those principles they learned in the military, in the public sector, and bring it into the private sector through veteran-owned and led businesses. How did I come up with this? I will say that my own story, I am a 21-year Air Force veteran, and all of that was in financial management. Like to say I didn't fly the planes, I just paid for them, and had a great opportunities throughout my career, whether that was managing a $15 billion pot in the Pentagon, or 12 billion on the front lines of Iraq and Afghanistan. I've been had that opportunity and privilege, and finished up my career in the White House under President Obama, previous administration, and basically managed the communications budget for him. It's there where I met my co-founder, Mason Rice. Mason is a retired lieutenant colonel as well from the Army. Try not to hold the Army against him. No offense, General Wharton. And but he was called away to the Department of Energy Office of Intel and Counterintelligence, specifically to deal with cybersecurity, energy security, and emergency response. So you'll see that we have extreme ties with lots of different agencies, and they call upon us when their subject matter expertise is needed, and that was Mason today. So when I continued on and transitioned out of the military into the private sector, I came to Knoxville, Tennessee, and became the chief operating officer and financial officer for Tagg Resources. It's a small fiduciary firm here in Knoxville. And when I got here in 2015, it was about 45 employees, about 450 million assets under management. And a couple of things happened there that put me on this path. Number one is I took the leadership principles and some of the things the military is very good at in terms of structure, organization, administration, and I took that from my 2 decades in the military, put it into play at this company, and it had pretty phenomenal results. It was about a 15-year-old company, and at that time, again, 450 million assets under management, and about 3.5 years later, we had 1.5 billion AUM and about 95 employees. And so that was part one, is that the things that we learned in the military were very applicable to the private sector, especially in the small business arena. Second thing is, we were growing so crazy fast. They said, "Hey, you're a money guy. We need some money. Go find us $3 million." And that was about 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago. And so that was my introduction into the world of alternative capital. Over the next 6 to 9 months, I learned how to know your enemy and read up on all of things venture and debt and any kind of alternative capital. And I found out that it reminded me a lot of my time in the Pentagon and managing large pots of money when there was a finite dollar amount and an infinite amount of requirements. So I thought this is something I could do. This is something that marries two passions of mine: money management and helping veterans in their transition and scaling into the private sector. So I went to the company, said, "I'm going to get us the money. I believe in our story," and I did. Got us what we needed. But I also want to start a fund that really addresses people like me that have served their country and are looking to take that service into the private sector. So that was about 3.5 years ago. I spent about a year getting mentored by local venture capitalists, putting the right team together, putting the infrastructure. And approximately 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, we launched Veteran Ventures Capital. It was originally a $5 million fund. It has caught wind throughout various agencies, entities, and organizations throughout the country. And they agreed, saying that they want to be a part of this, but it was too small for them, and they wanted to make it 20 million. So we have done that, scaled it to the point where it's now my full-time job. It's the only thing I do, and that is why I'm here today, is to present this opportunity to you and see just how much we can do together. And again, starting off this slide that you see in front of you, what we see time and time again is that the military is called upon to lead out of a crisis. The things that the military brings to the table, we'll talk about a little bit, but you've seen it firsthand for those of you that are in New York, when the Navy posted ships over there to ensure the protection of members of the community. They thrive under pressure. Again, you can see that adaptability and resilience, that's something we do daily on the battlefield. The boardroom makes it easier. So pivoting is what the private sector calls it, and it's a way of life for the military. And again, that leadership is perfected in crisis. We know and we understand what it means to lead and serve, and it's an outstanding opportunity to see this in action in the private sector. And again, you'll see the differentiation that we bring to the table of a typical or traditional venture capital fund and what we are doing in our focus in the veteran entrepreneur. So why do we only invest in veterans? You can take a look. We have a white paper on our website that goes to the details of what, statistically speaking, Fortune 500 leaders bring to the table in their leadership of the greatest and most powerful companies. And the statistics that they talk about there are some of the ones that are listed here. I won't read every one of them over to you, but essentially all of these characteristics, whether that is that adaptability or if it is process management, problem solving, and decision making in a time constrained environment, all of these things are taught in the military at a very early age, where you will see people that have been in for less than 10 years in charge of hundreds of people and millions of dollars. The confidence that they receive in those areas helps bring them and position them to take those principles and apply them in the private sector. If you're looking for that social impact piece, this fund has you covered as well, because the military knows no race, gender, or ethnic bias. All are leaders, all are innovators. And so then the one distinguishing characteristic that we pride ourselves on is getting things done, mission execution. That's the goal of this fund. That's the goal of making things happen in terms of developing businesses and delivering a return that you can be proud of. The last bullet in there, the large and growing addressable market. I will tell you that that is true. That first bullet there of the military being more technologically advanced, highly educated. We will talk further about that and the opportunity, and I'll specifically ask General Wharton to step up and talk a little bit about what he's doing right in New York City. And again, this is a large market. There's over 20 million veterans today. It's growing on an annual basis by about 250,000. Every one of those, just a real quick statistic on veteran ownership. You can see that almost 10% of all businesses today are veteran owned. And what happened really to bolster that statistic, it was post World War II, when the veterans came back after the war, 60% of them started their own businesses, and they launched us into a decades-long economic domination, if you will, across the globe, largely on the back of the people that had also provided that the defense of our nation. What has happened since then under post 9/11? Well, there's only 25% of the people that are transitioning out every year that desire to start their own business, which is still a large number. However, the actual percentage that starts those businesses is less than 5%. It's closer to 4%. And we think that's a travesty because of that piece that I told you earlier about the technology and the innovation and the adaptability. And so the number one limiting access that they talk about in every opportunity is their access to capital. So Veteran Ventures Capital seeks to bridge that gap and bring in the capital from people like you to make sure that these businesses not only start, but they excel, grow, and are taken to the next level. And we ask you, this is an opportunity for help us to bring back that economic growth engine to America and make an amazing return that you can be proud of. I won't spend a whole lot of time on these next two slides. A lot of you do this for a living. You know that statistics show that the smaller and emerging managers historically outperform those experienced ones. And so it's even though we have lots of experience on this team, myself being like 25 years in the financial management business, and adding that team together, we have over 100 years of combined experience. Being this is a first-time fund, we would fall into these statistics. Again, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this too. Everyone agrees in today's economic environment that not only to diversify yourself into venture capitals, but to make it a pillar of the investment philosophy in one's portfolio. So then we come down to why Veteran Ventures Capital. And quite simply, we are, not only do we understand that military culture and how profitable it can be, we've lived it. We've really grown to understand what traditions, what opportunities, and what characteristics make not only a successful military career, but what has it done in the private sector as well. So that experience, there's three areas I list here. The financial expertise, again, we've managed billions throughout the globe. The technology, my co-founder, Mason Rice, he has a doctorate in cybersecurity. Some of the work that he's done is pretty incredible. I'll go through it in the next slide a little bit. Can't do it quite the justice that he can and some of the things that he's done and continues to do. But that bottom line is, again, execution. We want to see things happen, make things happen, and get things done. So we continue to serve our nation right now, preserve the American way of life, and generate a return, and again, all in the process. Again, that's just the technology piece too. I want to set the stage for when General Wharton talks a little bit about one of those initiatives that is a partner, key alliance of ours. You've already heard about my background and what I've done in the military and in the private sector. Again, Mason Rice, unable to make it today, but he did do some time with the NSA, who also paid for his doctorate and then utilized him as sort of this, taking him across country and trying to break into cyber-related areas and expose vulnerabilities. And he was able to do that. One particular story was actually one of the, I believe it was a dam somewhere in New York that talked about their system being incredibly secure. It was actually in the middle of the water. You had to get out to it, and they said it was impenetrable. And he used his iPhone 4 at the time to actually break into it while they were sitting there talking. So the kind of skill set that he brings to the table is pretty immense when it comes to anything cyber or AI related. So that's us. Again, we have a full up board of directors as well. And one of those who is here today is Lieutenant Colonel retired Elton Johnson. And Elton, I'd like to have you kind of speak a little bit about what you've done over the past couple of decades as well, and how AmeriVets and us have partnered up.
Thanks, Darren. Good afternoon, everybody. I won't take up too much of your time, so I know everyone's busy. I'll just briefly talk about myself and my firm. As Darren informed you, I'm a disabled vet. I have or had 37 years of service in the military, primarily in the reserves, in the Marine Corps Reserve and in the Army Reserve. It turned into active duty after 9/11 when I got called up like all the other reservists and I got deployed. So as a result of that, I did 2 tours in Iraq and I did the tour in Afghanistan. On the civilian side, I've actually been a stockbroker for 43 years. I became a stockbroker back in 1977. And since 1994, I've been CEO of my own broker-dealer, Vet Securities. And this is certified as both minority and disabled vet owned and operated. As a matter of fact, we're the second oldest disabled vet certified broker-dealer in the industry. So I'm very proud of that. Basically, for about the first 20 years of operation, we are just a couple of guys, disabled vets, running the firm. But I was fortunate enough in 2018 to find a strategic partner, South Street Securities, which is you can probably look them up on the you can look them up on the internet. They're a firm that specializes in repurchase agreements, and hooking up with them enabled Merivet to become a multi-million-dollar broker-dealer. So now we're very much involved in the institutional business on Wall Street. As a matter of fact, we're doing our first IPO next week. In addition to that, we've tried to create as many avenues of revenue as possible. I've always been fascinated by investment venture capital, but I've never really dabbled in it, or I don't know that much about it. So when Darren and I met, I mean, it was just a perfect strategic alliance that we formed. I like working with veterans because, as Darren says, it's just so much better in regards to their attitudes, their outlook, their professionalism, their leadership. And of course, he was specializing in a field that Amerivet wants to get involved in, and it just made perfect sense. So we've been working together for the past couple of months, and things are plodding along. And as Darren will express further on in his briefing, we've got a clear plan. It's a good plan, and we're all gung-ho in regards to it. That's basically all I have right now, Darren. So I'll turn it back over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Al. So the last part of the team that I'll talk about is the subject matter experts in the investment category. So the gentleman on this slide here talked to you a little bit about private equity, angel investment, venture capital, corporate VC. We've got all bases covered. We've got the best in the business looking over our shoulder, being a part of our investment committee. And on the line with me is Paul Woolard. And Paul, if you would also talk a little bit about yourself.
And good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for listening in. And just to quickly hit on this slide, as Darren mentioned, the 4 of us bring different aspects of activity and capability in various arms of this space. In particular, with my background, I've got 30 years of prior experience in big agriculture, having set up corporate venture arms within my 2 predecessor companies, Tate & Lyle and ADM, and have a background in biotechnology and food ingredient development that I'm now leveraging into what Darren is building here. So again, thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. All right. And then when it comes to partnerships, we've aligned ourselves again with the best in the business. I won't go through every one of these partners, but I will highlight that you see Vet Securities. That's one of our strategic alliances. But the one in the middle there, 2 I'll highlight. One is Bunker Labs. Bunker Labs is an awesome opportunity and organization. It's a nonprofit nationwide in over 30 cities. Just got a donation from JP Morgan, I think last year, of about $2 or $3 million to expand to all 50 states. Its mission is simple. It wants to help military veterans start businesses. That's it. Okay, and they have tools and resources to do that. Incubators, accelerators, and even entrepreneurs and residents type of programs. I started the chapter in Knoxville. I head that up. And again, I'm part of the leadership committee that helps across the nation. The other one is the National Center for Urban Operations. Every one of these talks a little bit about our unique deal flow, presence, the resources, syndication, whether that's leveraging some different certifications we'll talk about. But the National Center for Urban Operations is a tremendous security-related organization that is bringing so much opportunity to the table that I asked General Wharton to talk a little bit about it. And sir, if you would like to get on and talk a little bit about what it is that you've put together and how it all works, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, well, thanks, Darren, and thanks everyone for allowing me to talk a little bit today. Unlike the financial piece, when I was departing the military, I was asked to do a couple things, and I was on the road talking about national security technology acceleration and where all the gaps were between transition to the government of the technology from all the major companies. Previously, I had led the Army's 13,875 engineers and scientists, and they were across all disciplines, whether they were in land, air, space, ground, communication, weapon systems, electronics, everything you see in the Army, whether a soldier shoots it, flies it, eats it, drives it, or communicates with it, or rides in it, I've had my hands in the design of technology. So through that, we've won several presidential manufacturing innovation initiatives, consortiums that stimulate the economy, centers of excellence, public-private partnerships that were all part of stimulate the economy and the nation at different points in time. I've been involved in the technology in the Army, commanding the Army's Research Development Engineering Command for about, and had my hands in technology for about 10, 15 years in the government. When I left, we were also looking at dual use technologies and what we could transition into the private sector. But from the National Center for Urban Ops was designed to do national security technology acceleration in a dense urban environment. And basically, it was originally designed to vet all our technology from the government in a dense urban environment, and what would work, what wouldn't work. And the technology that we're developing would be templates that we would use in smart cities, and then bring those around to other parts of the nation. Of here is this menu of capabilities you may want to consider to put in your cities to make it resilient, make it a smart city, and things of that nature. But it was all about New York City. In the next 10 years, about 60%, depending on what stat you use, of the world's population is going to live in a city. And a lot of are building below ground. So how do you operate in that environment? What technology will work above ground, below ground? How do you make it resilient? And how do you cut across all the functions of a city, whether they're healthcare, whether it's transportation, whether it's energy, whether it's computational sciences and your command and control mechanisms. So what we do is we look at national security technology acceleration, look at technologies that we're working with the government. We help define some of the requirements, give that back to the government. We have some rapid acceleration capabilities. And then those that are not as oriented when they, for just military uses, we look at transitioning those into the private sector. We were using Fort Hamilton, New York as the original command and control center. It originally was going to go away, but we kind of made it an interagency, intergovernmental activity there in New York City as a hub. When I was designing this years ago, I ran into the congressional leadership, and I was having to negotiate with Congressman Fraylinghausen because he wanted me to put it over at Picatinny, and we always wanted it to have it into the city where we could provide command and control, interagency, intergovernmental. So we have a lot of relationships out there with many of the New York City entities, a lot of the other capabilities that are out there. We are service disabled, veteran owned. We have been working National Security Technology Acceleration. The left organization over there, National Security Service Institute, is our academic think tank. So we have relationships with Columbia, with New York University, with West Point, and many other across the nation, with Arizona State, with Texas A&M, many different universities, Columbia, and things of that nature. But the main focus, national security technology acceleration and helping our nation close the gap. When it comes to private sector, how do we provide security for a city? How do we operate in there? Does GPS work in a city? Fire department chief told me, he said, I was walking the city with him, he points up, he says, look, I have GPS, but can you tell me if there's someone in a 34th story building I got to go up and rescue so I can save a life or and not send someone up there? So we showed him some of the technology we're doing in the military. We transferred that to him. He's got a little UAV that he can send up. It can look through any obscure and any smoke, dust, building, and see if there's someone in there he has to go rescue. It was always powered by a fund. I was given a fund way back, but I lost, frankly, in that business, not knowing that side. I lost faith and confidence in the guys who were putting it in. So I said, nope, I won't go with that fund. I will use other government funding and opportunities to link in private companies with other government funds to drive this solution. And so what I've been doing is doing that, but now is the time to transition and operate the fund so that we can speed things up and work on both security, national security for the nation, resilient smart cities for the city, and things of that nature. We know all the companies. There's probably any time I probably have no less than 50 companies that are coming to me on behalf of wanting to get into the government, and I interface between the two. What's not on those charts? I'm a advisor to Housing and Urban Development. I'm an advisor to the senior advisor to the Army Chief Technology Officer, and there's many other capabilities and capacities and roles that I play in this environment. Let's go to the next slide, Darren. So when we started this, I was fortunate to have some products that were basically born out of the government in big data, use of AI to do some technology search identification. Originally, it was to transition that technology into the government, and in other cases where with all the work that we're talking about in other countries and adversaries, as we have major power competition now, is to take technology and to actually, in those days, buy the companies to keep them in the United States so the technology wouldn't be proliferated over to overseas. So those were some of the original things that I was asked to do on behalf of the government. We also formed public-private partnerships with the City of New York and all the universities there. We're helping across the board. We teach at some of the universities. Most of my guys that operate in New York City are dual-hatted. They work for the National Security Innovation Network. I used to mentor that organization. That's an OSD, Office of the Secretary of Defense organization, and that I still help coach and mentor and bring and extend the network from a public-private sector into the government there. And those are basically the main functions that we have. So as we're going through all this, what we tried to do is we tried to optimize. I'm linked because I sit on the board of Vet Securities. That links back into the work that Elton is doing in his company, that we oversee Elton's work. And one of the things I've always been trying to do up there at Vet Securities, who has a relationship with South Street Securities, is establish an arm for technology so that we could do M&As and help advise with some of the tools that I've been given to do technology search and discovery out there. So we get some insights that were generated that we can look at into the future. And what I used to say in that government, if I'm not looking at the counter to the counter to the counter, then I'm behind, and that kind of thing. So those were just a couple of quick points there of where we are and what we've been doing. We've been doing everything that we started out to do, less the fund, again, because of I lost confidence in the ability of who was managing it, and we had the PPMs and all that, but I just was going to be very selective, being sensitive to the government needs and things of that nature. So that's where we were with that. Dual use technologies, things that we can transition and bring to the government very quickly. We help define the requirements. Now, if we have the funding, we can help fund some of those requirements to get those companies over the goal line and to bring them to the government. So I'll stop there and turn it back over to Darren. Darren?
Hey, Darren, can I jump in here for a second? This might be, you guys can decide, but might be good for John. We have a question from Juan Palasul. How can veterans, what I believe he's saying, in Wall Street firms get involved?
Well, we and I really appreciate that question, because we've been trying to go out. We've been working it step by step. We've been out doing setting up the National Center for Urban Ops and using government money to do that. We want to make it open so that we can get a contribution from the private sector into that, so that we can, help stimulate the economy also, which is a big mission here, and accept grants and funds and other sources of income. One of the things the government is asking me to do is to help start the economy. That's the smart cities piece that we're trying to get, to generate in all those different sectors that compose the city, and then receive funding and help co-share. The comment back is that the government doesn't think they can do it all themselves. They really need the private sector to help to do that. So that was one of the conversations I've had with government officials.
So, Darren, if you don't mind, another couple of questions. Is that all right?
Sure. Keep going.
I have one just for the benefit of the attendees. What's John's role in your fund?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, as far as the triad that you saw on this previous slide, so the National Security Venture Fund is essentially going to be managed into Veteran Fund 1. So he has overarching direction of what is going on in the Center for Urban Ops, and as such would be an advisor to the fund and an actual almost orchestrator of some of the different technologies that he is linking up with in industry, academia, and various intergovernmental agencies. So he'll come in and play a vital role in what we're doing, we're talking over just the roles and responsibilities, and as we flesh those details out. But overall, you can see that he would have a major play in what we're doing here, and be a part of the overall alliance that we're looking to again find that deal flow that is not only disruptive and innovative and growing, but it also is that tech transfer into the private sector as well. Did I answer that question, Arthur?
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Perfect. Shout out to our friend Rob Colorina. We're big fans of his. He's big fans of us. Rob has asked, advise how you manage against overpaying in terms of valuation, financial evaluation, especially if there's a COVID reactive side, and intend to hold valuations and not overpay for things.
Yeah, that's a great question as well, and that comes down to the due diligence process that we'll talk about a little bit later. But just to kind of the different valuation methods that we use are similar in nature to other funds of this nature and size and magnitude. The good news is that we have a committee that we utilize to basically have different viewpoints, whether that be from one who's evaluation from, again, that value standpoint versus growth, and taking the different models, whether that's discounted cash flow or the weighted average type of cost of capital type of method. So there's a lot of different ways to evaluate. We would take a look at all the different data points, not to mention the kind of the data-centric type of mentality that General Wharton and his team bring from the analytics side of what he has in terms of statistics and big data. So we use, again, there's just so many different points. We like to see everything out. There's no decisions that are made in a vacuum. And so we basically use a collaborative effort and to make sure that that different viewpoints are looked at and that the valuations are reasonable. They use the comparative method of other different industries and sectors that would be of like worth, and just again that traditional method, but done in a collaborative environment.
Yeah, and some of the work that we have and some of the capability allows us to look at technology by company, by country, by patent, by part. If you took a microsatellite, you expanded it and you said, here's all the components of a microsatellite, we can see where the investments are going, who's building what companies are on the leading edge, what are lagging companies, and where do we need to do from a government standpoint, prepare to defend against those capabilities. So these are some of the extra, this was born out of OSD, some of the model and some of the big data tools that we have, and that's what we do. We look at those technologies and see where we need to invest and how do we counter those technologies, but in a public sector, what technologies are value added, say in a smart city for a resilient smart city? How do you manage edge of the grid capabilities? How do you redistribute energy? What are different forms of all that? And we have relationships with consortiums, the New York City piece with 24 cities out at Smart City Consortium that's out of Denver, helping on the governor's economic recovery team out there for small businesses, women-owned businesses, and we're linking them back to HUD and looking back some federal funding and things like that.
Very
So
cool.
just a little bit to add there.
Darren, may I go ahead with 2 more questions?
Yes, you may.
Our friend John Mahoney has a shout out for you, a Marine Corps veteran and bunker lab supporter here. I'm just going to read it. Thrilled to hear of the work you're doing and couldn't agree more about the qualities that veterans bring to the table in the private sector. Could you please clarify if your investment thesis is to fund veteran companies generally or to veteran-led companies that sell to the government? We'd love to stay in touch. So hope we receive your contact information following the presentation, and you will get all that, John. But please.
Yes, great. Again, I love the questions, so the investment thesis is very straightforward. It's veteran-owned, veteran-led companies. They need to have someone in the C-suite that is directing the strategic nature of that company that has the military training skill set and competencies to bring to the table. I'd say 90%, if not higher than that, of these companies that come to us are majority veteran owned. So we do see a lot of that. The requirement, though, is that we need to have that veteran in the position of leadership that will direct that company and be there for when it grows and scales. So that's the, now, what do I see in terms of deal flow? We're getting 3 to 5 pitches a week today, and we have been for 2 years, even though we didn't deploy capital until last year. But what we have been seeing is those areas that the Defense Department and that the military is good at is really where our best deal flow comes from. Those things like what the general talked about in terms of technology, cybersecurity, cyberspace, aerospace, logistics, those types of issues. And again, those things dovetail perfectly into what he's doing in his endeavor under the Center for Urban Ops. We're in lockstep agreement. Now, what do we also do? My last 8 years in the military, I was in charge of both the money side of the house as well as the contracting and procurement. So the service disabled veteran-owned moniker that we have, that AmeriVet has, that is one of those opportunities that we're looking at from our different portfolio companies. When they have that certification, that allows mandatory set-aside that the government does at the federal and in many state levels that allows them to get into there. So it's a great opportunity to mitigate some of the COVID type of fluctuations that come when crisis management, whether that's this type of pandemic, whether it's the real estate, big problem that occurred back in the 2008, 2009 time period, or whatever you want to go. You can go all the way back to Y2K, all these different opportunities. But the government has found, we have found, again, personal experience as well, that although the procurement process, by a lot of stretch of the imagination, again, speaking from experience, is very hard to get into, once you're into it, and being that we've all done this, and that's what I did in the military, I can show the shortcuts to get there, or the proper way I should get there and cut and just get right down and cutting the red tape. It's pretty hard to get out of it as well. And so it's a great opportunity to utilize those different contractual vehicles. Not a requirement, although we do like those revenue models. And I'll talk a little bit about the kind of companies that we are seeing in our pipeline that we've invested with and that we see going forward. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right. Well, let's talk about the portfolio then. Unless you have other questions, Arthur, just feel free to kind of.
Well, there's one more question from Juan. I'd like to answer that, if that's okay. Can I go ahead and answer that last question?
Yeah, for sure. Okay with me, as long as it's okay with you guys.
Yeah, let me just answer that, because when Will Roper, before Will, and I know Will, was in the Strategic Capabilities Office at OSD, he had about $5 million. It may have been $10 million. And being one of the Army guys, I was helping Will establish himself in the position of Strategic Capabilities Office. And that help gave him, I think it was from $10 to $50 million that he could use for the government. So way before, you said the one that connected with AFWorks, that was part of the message and the story I was on the road telling, that we need these accelerators, we need the AFWorks, we need the SoftWorks, we need all these accelerators to get things going for the government to remain competitive with our adversaries or where our adversaries were. So AFWorks is one fund that is working primarily on Air Force related issues. Now, when we first started and I was on the road talking, these accelerators weren't there. The Defense Innovation Unit was just being established. I had traveled with Secretary Carter out to San Jose and met him out there, and then and as he was cutting the ribbon on the Defense Innovation Unit, and that was part of this discussion. So of what we've done since that time, other accelerators have occurred. AFWorks is powered by Techstars, for example, and other folks have jumped on. In the earlier days, the only ones you really had were InQtel, which was designed to help support the CIA. And that was very functional because my mission had to be overseas. So part of what we were setting up was an accelerator and incubator that could hit all the other areas that weren't covered by the government and national security. So these different service accelerators, there's a Navy accelerator, there's an Army accelerator, all these things, these were the whole points we're trying to do, but they're still a little bit stovepipe functional versus being multifunctional. And the SoftWorks is starting up right now. We're very close to that group. That group is getting funded at $4 billion. They're trying to establish an accelerator. We're helping them. My guys that wear two hats, some of them in the private sector work for the National Center for Urban Ops. In the other sectors, they advise the National Security Innovation Network out of OSD, or they advise the Special Forces and Operation Forces. And we're helping them define those requirements. So one thing that we are different is that we can help shape the requirements on the front side. We know all the processes from the science and technology, the R&D, through the PMs. Once item gets accepted by the Army, it goes to the PMs, PEOs, and then it's in sustainment. But what the AFWorks does is just a rapid contracting mechanism. That's one process in this whole function that has been giving some function. It's not the entirety of the material life cycle process. They may get a contract at AFWorks, a SBIR, Small Business Innovative Research, phase 1. That doesn't mean they're going to go to phase 2, meaning get a bigger contract. But I do work with AFWorks. I have supported and sent technologies their way. I've sent a lot of COVID technologies to different accelerators, the other ones that are at the medical research communities and things of that nature. So they're one accelerator, but not a complete end-to-end solution, just a rapid contracting mechanism that has some funding. We're a little bit different. We're an end-to-end capability. Over.
Yeah, and if I could piggyback on that, you can see on this on our partnership slide, those bottom two right, one is AFWorks and the other one's Air Force Ventures. AFWorks itself is the entity. AFWorks, the AF Ventures is the funding piece that the general talked about underneath it. Just so happens that one of my former troops that I commanded over in a finance operation that overseas is the deputy, one of the deputy procurement agents in the AFWorks entity out of San Antonio. So we have definite inroads, both for the general and myself, in terms of execution and deal flow of opportunities with them as well. So yes, real quick, I know we're gonna kind of put it into overdrive here a little bit, but I wanted to talk about, as I said last year, we broke escrow, made our first couple of investments. The first one on the left, Haven Lock, is a great story. I can tell you about the Army Special Forces gentleman who started that up. He was busting down doors in Iraq and Afghanistan. Came to some he couldn't get through in Afghanistan. Even had to blow out the walls next to it, and that's how the concept was born for Haven Lock, which is a locking mechanism that goes into the foundation of a house. But when we got into them, it was before they went on Shark Tank. They did some great opportunity and visibility on Shark Tank, and then took our investment and pivoted into the solution for an active shooter scenario. It's a really neat opportunity. I don't have time to get into it, but it's something great about how they have been able to deploy this same mechanism throughout public facilities, whether that's universities, libraries, large gathering spaces, and help, again, address one of the threats and security issues facing our country. On the right is Yates Electrospace. And again, this is a great company. You can kind of think of it as a logistics drone company. They have a great product that has their first customer is the Israeli aerospace industry. So they already have their first million from them, and they are growing and understanding their mechanism that it was able to again pivot towards COVID, supplying of areas that couldn't get normal supplies to them, and they deploy that capability, and they are actually using that same modified cargo drone with the special ops community through Softworks, as a matter of fact, to help develop and deploy an opportunity for our special operations teams. Those are just the first two, and I just kind of wanted to make sure that everybody was on the same playing field on this slide to show you that each one of these companies here have received anywhere from 25 to 50 million in venture-backed capital. The one I'll highlight is plated on the left over there. They did receive about 20 million in venture-backed money, and then they sold a couple of years back for 300 million. So it was a really nice return. Venture-backed companies do really well. Veteran-backed venture companies can do outstanding, and that's what we want to see happen to all the veteran-owned businesses that we are a part of. So the fund itself, a couple slides to talk about some of the sector and focuses that we look at. Now, this slide looks like it's a lot. And what I wanted to kind of show you here, the focus is all about technology. These areas that you see that we list out, and again, I don't have time to go through all of them, but they align and mirror with the Department of Defense national security areas as outlined by the National Security Strategy and OSD, Office of Secretary of Defense. So various alliances, partnerships, subject matter areas, or experts, we have the folks on deck that ensure each program is vetted properly through our process management. Again, the type of business we're looking at, it is those that have a little bit of traction, some revenue that are going typically under 10 million in annual recurring revenue. We're looking for that set-aside mentality if possible, the certifications that help them get preferred contractual treatment. Again, it scratches every itch over there on the right, social impact, accelerator ties through the Center for Urban Ops and things like that, Bunker Labs as well. So just a lot of opportunities there. What I wanted to kind of quickly go through is our pipeline is full. Right now, we have 12 million in ready to funded requirements today. So various aspects, all of these, with the exception of one, is really coronavirus independent, meaning that these are security related deals. These are opportunities to help train in an augmented environment. They're healthcare related on some of them, and or they capitalize on the remote nature that we see ourselves in today. So again, I could go through a couple of these companies. Time constraints prohibit me from doing so, but again, I'd love to connect with everybody on this call and go through each one of these opportunities to you on an individual basis. And they touch everything: logistics, supply chain, tech-based healthcare. We have them represented very well, and these have been through the initial stages of due diligence, and in the process, once that next tranche of capital comes in, to go through deeper due diligence. And that diligence package that we've talked about, pretty clear now on that we have the right people at the table, that we have the right subject matter experts, that we take those different requirements. Again, we are in the sense that traditional VC, where we get a lot of more deals than we do funding, and you're looking at that 1 to 3% execution rate down our list. However, we have that different types of opportunities, process flow, if you will, automated workflows to all the people that are a part of the process, repeatable process management. Again, it's another strength of the military that we bring to the due diligence process. The fund itself, I will tell you that you know, if everybody on this call got involved and was able to be a part of the fund, we would be able to scale up to that 50 million mark and do even more good. But right now we're at the 20 million area, and we're looking for those right partners. I know someone made the question of what can Wall Street firms do. Well, the institutional level is 2.5 million, the individual level is $1 million. And happy to kind of discuss what that means and the opportunities. It's a typical LPA arrangement, limited partnership agreement. We hope to do this investment period of around 3 years, deploying the capital, and then take the next 7 years to harvest. Investment size, sweet spots around $1 million per investment, although we will go lower, as low as 250,000. And we also reserve capital for the follow-on opportunities to ensure minimal dilution. And again, this is a construction that is, you know, steeped in making sure to eliminate and minimize any intra-portfolio correlation risk. So we try to do that in the diversification plays. Again, favoring that governmental contracts as a way to bolster that counter-cyclical business opportunity. And we go into every one of them. The exit strategies, looking at that 10x return for our investors, and seeking to elevate those portfolio companies to the next level of scaling, whatever that is. Could be a next series of funding, could be the buyout acquisition strategy, which in this smaller space tends to be what happens, or eventually an IPO. And we have Vet Securities on deck to help with each one of those transactional requirements. That deal flow, by now you've seen that we have some of the most unique deal flow on the planet, and our collaborative solicitations, again, throughout the veteran community, whether that's Bunker Labs, Angel Groups, Center for Urban Ops, all of those different opportunities means we are able to bring a lot of different opportunities to the table. And we have, again, people that have been doing work with the government for decades. We have private risk management specialists on the investment team and throughout the network. And again, we look to scale those operations and augment the teams that come to the table and helping them develop and grow their companies. So as I wind down here, we're looking to really find the right partners, get that next 5 million. By the goal is by the end of August, and then have the full 20 million in by the end of the calendar year, or hopefully we'll have enough in the commitment stage that we can start talking about that 50 million. So that's the goal. We have all the requirements in place. We've got the key stakeholders, the right third-party fiduciaries that are helping manage this fund. We've outsourced a lot of that fund administration to Carta, which is one of the best in the business in that area. The legal team is one of the again, one of the more prominent ones in the entrepreneurial space, Cooley. So again, we're fully covered. We have all the key players in, and we look to, again, just round out that partnership piece with the investment arm that each one of you can bring to the table. So in summary, I'd like to say, again, thank you for this opportunity, and I'm presenting you with an opportunity. What we're talking about here makes good business sense. I've shown you statistically how businesses value the military training and skill set, strong work ethic. It just makes good business sense. Veterans make a good business case. The financial idea of venture capital is undisputed. Diversification into an elite portfolio of the high-performing companies just makes sense in today's economic environment. And a good common sense, too. The service, military service, it's our goal to make that the gateway into entrepreneurship and financial freedom. They've done their time on the board and the battlefield, and they can do the same thing in the boardroom. Again, it's a return that you can be proud of, and it's time to lead out of this crisis. What better way to do that than getting behind the people that are helping secure our nation's freedom and way of life? So that concludes the formal part of this presentation. I do look forward to, again, trying to make contact with each and every one of you. Thank you again for your attentiveness over this past little bit, and I'm subject to your questions now.
So thank you, guys. That was super interesting and nicely done. I don't think we have any questions here, and being that you guys are in the military, you are so precise that you wrapped up at 3:15 exactly. Is there anybody out there that has a question that would like to present it to our panelists before we sign off here? Give them a couple more seconds just because sometimes it takes time to write the question. You guys were really good. I really appreciate it. And thank you everybody for attending. I'm going to wrap it up now because I know people have other things to do as well at 3:15. Super appreciate you guys being here, and thanks everybody for attending. Little housekeeping. Again, we're going to make sure that Darren and his colleagues get the information of everybody that was on the call, and they'll be in touch with the deck and any other information. And please feel free to connect with them directly. And also, if there's anybody that you think would benefit from knowing them, also feel free to introduce them to Darren and his colleagues. So thanks to the Family Office Insights crew. Always been awesome to us, so we really, really appreciate it. And thank you, Darren.
Thank you, appreciate it. And I believe you are going to make this available online afterwards as well.
Yeah, we're going to record it. Can I just, for the record, because I'm not military, I referred to you as General. Elton, what do I refer to you as properly so I can make it as a matter of record so I did it right?
I was in Special Forces for 9 years, so you can just call me by my first name, Elton.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't get that formal.
And Paul? I can't hear you, but I can't read lips, but I tried.
All right, just Paul.
Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. That was awesome. We'll do a follow-up call. It's all recorded, and we'll get it off to you. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, y'all.
Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Thanks, Arthur.
Appreciate y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.